In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial on how to cut this stylish backless princess dart halter neck shirt. And to start drafting, I'm going to mark out my basic measurements. For the measurement, I'll start for the back and I'll mark my shoulder to bust, waist, and I'm going to measure extra 7 inches to get my hip line. So if you're on a much taller part, go ahead to use 8 inches to mark this. So after marking this right, I'll just label it as my hip. The next step is to go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder is 14 divided by 2. I have 7 inches and I will mark. I'll come down by 1 inch at this point for my shoulder slant and mark a basic neckline of 3 inches by 1. So after marking that, I'm just going to go ahead to place my ruler and I'll connect. Next, I'll connect from the neckline all the way to the shoulder slant. The next step is to go ahead to find my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I have 7 inches, which I marked a straight line at that point. I'll go back and mark my shoulder divided by 2 at this point. Now I'll place my ruler and I'm going to connect this going all the way up. After I'm done marking that, there's no need marking out the armhole because this pattern is a backless pattern. We will not be needing the armhole curve. So for the back of this dress, I'm going to be marking a dart. I'll go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. Note, this dart is starting from the upper part of the pattern all the way to the lower part of this dress, right? And I'll go ahead and extend this all the way to the lower part of the gown length. I'm using this pattern paper as the full length of my dress, but before going down, I'll mark ½ inch on both sides of the waist and come down by 4 inches. At the bust, I came down by 1 inch and I'll go ahead to connect this all the way to that point I have above, and I'll connect this to the lower part of my pattern and also connect this at the other side of my pattern too. Now the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to insert my body measurement, but before doing that, I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2 and I'll connect this line all the way to the lower part of my pattern, because at the back of the shirt you have to like slash it and join it back. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and I'll add a sewing allowance. This is a shirt pattern. You can just add 1 inch for sewing allowance, and this shirt is also fitted on the body. Now mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and also add your sewing allowance. Here I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4 and I'll add my sewing allowance. So what I have on the hip, I'll just minus like ½ inch from it and mark. So normally this dress does not have like a slit at the back, and you can go ahead to take what you have on the hip all the way down to allow you to walk, but to give it a little fitted effect, I went in by ½ inch. Now if you feel you want yours to be more fitted, go ahead to like go in a bit by 1 inch at the lower part. That means at the front part of your button in front, you're going to like leave a little space at the center so that it will enable you walk, because this is a shirt gown that does not have a slit at the back. Now normally you can go ahead to connect this to create a princess dart effect at the back, but since the pattern is that less, I won't be having need for that. Now if you also notice at the side of the pattern, there is a line coming from the waistline all the way down. Next, you need to measure the neckline of your shirt. So after measuring, what I have is about 3.5 inches. You'll be adding that extension to the front part of your shirt. Now I'll just go ahead to cut this out. If you have any questions so far, please kindly go ahead to leave your question at the comment section. So after cutting this out, if you still want to have that effect on the side, go ahead to just connect and cut it out. That means you'll be having 3 patterns for the back, which you'll be joining together. Now for the front, I went ahead to mark like a button allowance here, and I used 2 inches for the button allowance, but I'll still reduce it. Now here's the starting point. At the upper part, I'll be using it to add the neckline extension. Marked my shoulder to bust, under bust, waistline, and 7 inches to get my hip point. And I'll be using the full length of this pattern paper as the full length of this dress. I'll place my ruler and I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, and I'll come down by 1 inch. From that point, I'll go ahead to now mark a basic neckline of 3 inches at the neckline, and I'll also come down by 3 inches. So this is just a guide for this pattern. After I'm done marking that, I'll just go ahead to place my ruler and connect. After connecting from the neckline, I'll extend it all the way to this point. Sorry, from the shoulder, I'll connect to the neckline. I'll also mark my chest line, and to get that, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Now, I made a line, or I drew a line at that point. The next step is to mark your shoulder divided by 2 again on that line. Place your ruler and you're going to connect this all the way up. After connecting, go ahead to divide your armhole into 2 equal parts, come in by ½ inch, and from here, mark your bust circumference divided by 4. Connect from this midpoint all the way up, and connect from the bust circumference all the way to the armhole. And I'll draw out a straight line there. After I'm done marking this, I'll now go ahead to start marking my darts. I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, which I'm going to mark this all the way to the lower part of my pattern, because we are still going to cut this out separately and go ahead to join it. Now I'm going to connect going all the way down, and after connecting, I'll now impute my darts. My darts, I'm going to be using 1 inch, because if you notice on the dress, we have like a straight dart. Now I'm using 1 inch on both sides. You can also go ahead to use 1.5 inches on both sides if you're a plus size. Or if you don't want to use that, mark your dart equally. You can mark ½ inch in front of this pattern, this side, and then on the other side of the pattern, I'll mark 1.5. For a plus size like this side, you can mark 1 inch, and on the other side, you mark 2 inches. So why I didn't use this is because this is more like a shirt pattern. I don't want it to have more depth on one side to make it look like we are going to pad the pattern. Now I'm just going to go ahead to connect this all the way up and extend it to the lower part of the pattern. The next step is to go ahead to insert my body measurement for this pattern, but before that, I'll connect from the bust to the under bust, or from the under bust to the bust. Now I'll repeat the same process on the other side of my pattern. I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect from here all the way to the armhole, and I'll blend it out a bit. Now I was supposed to mark ½ inch on both sides for the dart, which I forgot. But first, let me mark my bust circumference divided by 4, then add my sewing allowance. Here, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and then add my sewing allowance. For your sewing allowance, go ahead to use 1 inch, because this is a shirt pattern and you don't need much sewing allowance. I'll also mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. Going over here, I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. Just like we did for the front pattern, whatever I have, I just took out ½ inch. So you can do this or just maintain what you have on the hip all the way down. Or if you want it to be a bit fitted, you can go in by 1 inch. Now for a regular shirt, you can go ahead to add your ease to this shirt if you don't want it to be fitted on your body. But if you want it to be fitted, you can leave your measurement directly this way. And if you also want it to be more fitted at the lower part, you can go in by 1 inch. So remember that neckline we marked at the back, which is 3.5 inches. I measured and I'll extend my neckline all the way to the upper part. Now I'm going to go in by ½ inch and I'll reconnect it to the neckline. This is so that the collar area of this shirt is going to relax very well. Now from here, measure what you want to use for your collar. I'm using 3 inches. So you can go ahead to cut out your collar together, or after cutting out this pattern, that is the halter neck part, you can just go ahead to cut your pattern, place it together, and now transfer it on your fabric. The reason why I'm cutting my collar together is because if you look at this dress, it's as if it was cut together with the dress. So I marked 2 inches here for the neckline, and I'm going to go up by that same 3.5 inches I have on this point, right? And I'll go ahead to mark 1.5 inches at this point, and then I'll now go ahead to extend it all the way to that 2 inches I have on the neckline here. Now from here I'll now connect. So while I was connecting this part, this is when I realized that I did not mark the dart, so I'll just go ahead to do that much later. So after connecting this to give you that halter neck effect, so make sure that the pattern on the lower part goes out by 1/2 inch. And while I was connecting, now I will now go ahead to add the darts on this part of the dress. So I was supposed to actually add this earlier, but it was an oversight. Here I'll mark 1/2 inch on this side of the dart and 1/2 inch on the other side. I'll now go ahead to blend it out, right? And also connect this on this side. And after I was done doing that, I'll blend out. Please go ahead to mark yours before marking this part. I actually forgot. So when you blend it, you notice that the upper part will now be meeting that extra 1/2 inch we went out by the side, right? Because this is a princess that most times the side tends to be shorter than that of the center part of the princess that. So I'll just go ahead and mark my pattern all the way to the lower part of this pattern. Now after I'm done marking this, the next step is to mark where you want your neckline to stop. So I'm just using like 1 inch above the chest line. This is not a standard. Please go ahead to use what is okay for you. Now I'll just connect this and I'll come out. So the next step you want to take is to go ahead to mark your button allowance. For the button allowance, I'm using 1 inch. So also remember you're going to cut a facing towards the neckline area of this dress. That is the neckline and also the button allowance of this dress. If you look at the actual dress, there's a facing at this part. So that's why I'm even using 1 inch for my button allowance. Now if you're not okay with the 1 inch, you can use 1.5 inches for the button allowance of this dress. So next is the collar. So you can cut out your collar together or you can cut it separately. So I came down by 3 inches here. So you can measure 3 inches or use whatever that is okay for you at the neckline, right, before cutting out your collar. So from here I'll extend my collar length to be 3 inches. So from here now I'll place my tape and tilt it down a bit and measure 4 inches. So this 4 inches is not a standard also. Go ahead to use what collar length that you want. Now I'll now place my ruler. I'm using the part that is not so straight and I'll connect it. This is just to give me that shirt collar effect. Now from this part of your pattern, from the waist, I connected all the way down. So I didn't use any particular measurement at that side. I just wanted to give that cut by the side. So after this, we are done drafting out, and the next part of this video is to go ahead to cut out. So just like I said, you can cut out your halter neck backless dress without having a collar. Then go ahead to like measure where you want the collar to be and just add it later as an extension. But why I did this is because I felt it was cut together, or even if you cut it out separately, you can just add an extension. I'm just going to go ahead to mark out, come out by 1/2 inch a bit and connect. I just want the collar part of this shirt to relax. So after cutting and I'm okay, this is what I have, right? So this is the upper part of the back and this will connect to the back of the dress. So you join that back together. Now I'll now go ahead to cut out the rest of the pattern. So I'll just go ahead to cut out the rest of this pattern. So if you have any question, please kindly go ahead to ask. Now you'll be cutting out this pattern into 3 pieces and you'll be joining it. Now the part going towards the front, you can use a facing, because if you notice there's a facing there. And I'll cut out all the darts of this pattern. So after cutting out, this is what I have. So earlier, like I said, you can go ahead to like cut out your pattern without having a collar. What I'll do is I'll just trim off the collar because I'm just trying to explain. So you can go ahead to cut out your pattern without a collar. Then go ahead to measure where you want the neckline to be. Then you can now place a pattern paper and trace out the color that you want for your shirt. So that way might be easier for you if you're finding it difficult to cut this way. Then place it together and you can now go ahead to cut it on your fabric as one piece. This is the end of the video.